Good afternoon, everyone. It's Hanifa Menon from hearthealthbrainhealth.com, encouraging healthy grieving and mindful actions. Today, I thought I would put a video out on a Sunday afternoon because, of course, my whole experience right now is so much on a spiritual realm that I'm eager to share it with you. So, of course, I looked up some quotations for my experiences today, and I found one that I may have shared with you before and you may have heard before. It's by Wayne Dyer. And this quotation says, "You are an infinite spiritual being having a temporary human experience. You are an infinite spiritual being having a temporary human experience." And I strongly believe this in terms of whether we were to look at the most um, common, we'll say, or most practiced religions and spiritual traditions, we can see that the same idea is there, that people feel that the body dies, but the soul lives on. So this is not a new concept, yet we don't live that way. We live as if we are our body, which is kind of interesting. And then I came across a quotation by an author named Rabindranath Tagore. Here we go. Rabindranath Tagore. And he's actually a very familiar author for many people for some time. But I loved this quotation, which said, "The human soul is on its journey from law to love, from discipline to liberation, from the moral plane to the spiritual." So let's say that again. The human soul is on its journey from the law to love, from discipline to liberation, from the moral plane to the spiritual. So when we think about from law to love, and from law, of course, we can see situations that this is allowed, this is not allowed. And I know that currently in our political times, a lot of people are aware of this. And we have our opinions about what we think about these can and can't do situations. Then we've got the from discipline to liberation, from you must do this to this is free for you to do, right? That sort of idea. Now, this is not anarchy. This is not chaos. This is a conscious decision of good actions, I'd say. That's the moral plane that we're also familiar with, right? So when I said good actions, even right now, what is good, right? So when we think about the moral plane, there's a lot of judgment. This is good, this is not good. This I support, this I do not support. There's a lot of judgment of this is right, this is not right, right? That sort of idea is the moral plane to the spiritual. When we look at the spiritual, this is where we start thinking, how does a higher consciousness look at actions in this world? How does the higher consciousness? The higher consciousness does not think with the human mind, right? So the human mind has a lot of judgment. So in terms of the spiritual higher consciousness, or we could say God consciousness, or we could say the universe, or any of these terms that we apply to this higher level of thinking, a higher space, a higher love of space to think from and act from and speak from, it's different in that spiritual realm. And it's interesting because, I've read things like this for so many years, and it's only in recent times of the past relatively short time, let's say in the past year, it's just been growing and growing and growing. It's so beautiful. And it's so incredible that, they say that once you've moved into the spiritual realm and you really have set a firm foundation in your awareness of it, you can't go back. You really can't go back to looking at things the way you did before. And that's what I'm experiencing, and I would love for you to experience it. But I thought I would just let you know what a beautiful space that is today. So then I came across another quotation by Albert Einstein that I'd love to finish with this video with. And I have to tell you that, first of all, for 5 minutes, please think about, are you feeling the peace, the contentment, the joy, the love that's part of that higher consciousness? Are you feeling it? And I mean, it doesn't mean that it's consistent. I'd love for it to be consistent for all of us. But let's say that as we're on this journey, we are uncovering that depth of us, which is the true self. We're getting to the source of us. We're getting to the higher self, the higher consciousness, the higher space to think, speak, and act from. And that space is filled with love. It's filled with love. It's filled with compassion. It's filled with empathy and joy and kindness and consideration. And anything lower than that is not filled with that same energy. So, this quotation that I want to end with hopefully will inspire you to think about, where am I living from? Am I living from a lower space of consciousness, which is filled with whether hurry sickness, I call it, so people being in a rush, whether anger, resentment, whether it's grief, I guess I could say, would fall in there, because grief takes some processing to come back to a space of love. So I would say grief that does fall into that space too. It could be worries, it could be anxieties. All of these sorts of emotions are lower than those higher self experiences, right? Higher self is more the experience. Lower self might be an emotion, might be a thought. Then see where you're living from most of the time. So this quotation that I keep on alluding to by Albert Einstein, it says, "We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us." So let me read that one more time. "We experience ourselves, our thoughts, and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us." So remember that we are often in a space where this is really important to me, and the people that are most important to me are important to me. So my thoughts, my feelings, my opinions all help either myself or the people closest to me, or who I'm choosing to interact with in this way. And then the people that are outside of me and us is them, and they are not to be trusted and not to be cared for and not to be loved. This is so important, right? Because when we're working from a space of we, everyone deserves love. And when we are working from a space of me, only I deserve love. And this is so important that it's been years, many, many years, that people have talked about this, spoken from this space, experienced this, thought this way, and lived this way. And you and I can live this way too. I'm certainly learning in my process that it's quite possible. It takes a mindful attention, and I would love to be here if you ever need my help to do this. Until then, I wish you a fabulous day ahead. I hope you think about this and see what kind of space you're thinking, speaking, and acting from. I wish you a fabulous day ahead, and remember, transform your mind and transform your life. Have a great day, everyone.